The screen glowed in front of me, cold and final. Count balance. $0. I stared at those zeros like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. The bursar's office hummed with fluorescent lights and distant conversations, but all I heard was the blood pounding in my ears. My college fund, the one my grandparents started when I was 10, the one I fed with every birthday check and summer job paycheck, was empty. Completely drained. The woman behind the counter shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Collins, is there another account we should check? Sometimes families set up multiple funds." I shook my head, unable to speak. My phone buzzed on the counter. A notification from our family group chat. I picked it up with shaking hands and saw the photo. Kyle stood beside a gleaming red Mustang with a massive bow tied across the hood. Mom and Dad flanked him on either side, their smiles wide and proud. The caption read, "Surprise for our boy. He finally got his dream car." My stomach lurched. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "Ma'am," the clerk asked softly, "are you all right?" I wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. Called Mom. She answered on speaker, her voice bright and casual. "Hi, sweetie. Did you see Kyle's surprise? Isn't it gorgeous? Where's my college fund?" My voice came out flat and cold. She laughed. She laughed. "Oh honey, don't be dramatic. You're smart, you'll figure something out. Kyle needed reliable transportation for his new job. You understand, right? Family helps family." I didn't understand. I didn't understand anything anymore. My name is Ava Collins, and I'm 19 years old. I grew up in a mid-sized Florida town where everyone knew your business before you did, where gossip spread faster than hurricanes, and where keeping up appearances mattered more than anything else. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for more interesting revenge stories. My whole life I'd been the responsible one, the planner, the kid who color-coded her homework folders and never missed a deadline. From the time I was 13, I worked toward one single goal: college. Not because I love school more than anything, but because my grandfather told me it was my ticket out. He'd sat across from me at a pancake breakfast when I was 9, maple syrup still on my chin, and said something I'd never forget. "College is your escape hatch, kiddo. Don't let anyone take that from you. This world's gonna try, but you fight for it." He'd started the fund that same year. Every Christmas, every birthday, he'd add a little more. When he died 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I promised myself I'd honor that gift. I took every AP class my school offered. I worked weekends at the grocery store, evenings at the library, summers at the community pool as a lifeguard. Every dollar I earned that wasn't for gas or lunch went straight into that account. By the time I graduated high school with a 4.2 GPA and honors cords draped around my neck, I had enough saved for 2 full years at a state university. I'd done everything right. I'd followed every rule. And now, standing in that bursar's office with my acceptance letter in hand and a dorm key already on my lanyard, I had nothing. I walked out of the building in a daze. The Florida heat hit me like a wall, thick and suffocating, but I barely felt it. My legs carried me on autopilot to a concrete pillar near the parking lot, and I sank down behind it where no one could see me. That's when I cried. Not gentle tears, but the kind that rip out of you when something breaks that can't be fixed, the kind that make your chest heave and your throat burn. My phone kept buzzing with messages from relatives commenting on Kyle's post. "So proud of you both. What a beautiful gift. Your parents are so generous." Aunt Teresa had added 3 heart emojis. Uncle Paul wrote, "That's what family's all about." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone into the nearest trash can and watch it shatter. Instead, I wiped my face, took 3 deep breaths like my old guidance counselor had taught me, and opened my banking app with trembling fingers. I started going through the transaction history, scrolling back week by week. 2 months ago there'd been a transfer. One massive withdrawal that cleared out everything. $23,847.16. Every cent. The note attached said, "Beneficiary update, authorized by account holder." Except I never authorized anything. I pulled up the original fund documents I'd saved in my email, the ones from Grandpa's lawyer that came after the funeral. My name was listed as the sole beneficiary. My grandfather had made that crystal clear in his will. Someone had changed it without telling me. Someone had forged my signature. Someone had stolen my future and bought my brother a car. Growing up, I'd always known Kyle was the favorite. It wasn't something anyone said out loud, it was just understood, like gravity or the fact that Florida summers were unbearable and mosquitoes were inevitable. The signs were everywhere if you knew how to look. When Kyle crashed his dirt bike at 12, Mom blamed the trail for being too steep and poorly maintained. When I forgot to take out the trash once at 14, I got a 20-minute lecture about responsibility and how she couldn't count on me for the simplest tasks. When Kyle barely passed his classes with D's and C minuses, Dad said he was finding his path and that not everyone's book smart. When I brought home straight A's every semester, Mom glanced at my report card and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to her phone without another word. Kyle got the bigger bedroom, the later curfew, the benefit of every doubt. I got the hand-me-down laptop and the expectation that I'd figure things out on my own because I was so independent and capable. I learned early that the best way to survive in our house was to stay useful and stay quiet. I didn't complain when Kyle borrowed my car and returned it on empty, or when he forgot to pay me back the $40 he owed me. I didn't argue when Mom volunteered me to help with his college applications while I was drowning in my own. I told myself it was temporary. Once I got to college, once I built my own life away from them, none of it would matter anymore. But now they'd stolen that future right out from under me, and they expected me to smile and congratulate Kyle on his new car. I spent the next 3 days digging through every document I could find, becoming a detective in my own life. Late at night, when my parents thought I was asleep, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor with my laptop open and the door locked, following the digital trail they'd left behind. The $529 college savings account had been moved to a joint account under Mom's name exactly 2 months before my high school graduation. The transfer authorization form was attached to the bank records, and when I zoomed in on the signature, my blood went cold. It looked like mine at first glance, but it wasn't. The letter A was wrong, the loop too wide and the slant too steep. The C, in Collins, had a tail I never used, curling down when mine always stayed straight. Someone had practiced my signature, probably tracing it from old permission slips or birthday cards, but they hadn't gotten it quite right. I took screenshots of everything. Bank statements showing the transfer. The original account set up from when I was 10. Transfer records with timestamps and IP addresses. The forged authorization form with that almost right signature. The original trust documents from Grandpa's lawyer that clearly named me as the sole beneficiary. I created a folder on my cloud drive and labeled it Evidence, then backed it up to 2 more cloud services just to be safe. My hands shook the whole time, adrenaline making my fingers clumsy on the keyboard, but I didn't stop. If they thought I was just going to accept this and move on like the obedient daughter I'd always been, they didn't know me at all. The girl who'd spent 4 years perfecting her college applications and managing a 4.2 GPA wasn't going to let this slide quietly into family history. Sunday dinner had always been mandatory in our house, a tradition Mom insisted on no matter what else was happening in our lives. Mom cooked pot roast with carrots and potatoes, Dad carved the meat with ceremonial precision, and we all pretended we were a normal, happy family for 2 hours every week. That week, I showed up with my phone in my pocket, recording app already running and set to save directly to the cloud. Mom set down a platter of roasted vegetables, the ceramic dish making a soft thud on the table, and smiled at me like nothing had happened. "How's the dorm situation going, sweetie? All settled in? Did you meet your roommate yet?" I placed my phone face down on the table next to my water glass, the tiny microphone aimed toward the center. Actually, I couldn't enroll. Turns out my college fund is completely empty. Drained. Not a single dollar left. The room went silent except for the sound of the kitchen faucet dripping in the background. Kyle froze mid-bite, a forkful of mashed potatoes halfway to his mouth, his eyes going wide. Dad cleared his throat and reached for his water glass, suddenly very interested in the ice cubes. Mom's smile didn't waver, didn't even flicker. She set down her fork with careful precision. Ava, we talked about this already on the phone. Kyle needed reliable transportation to get to his new job at the warehouse. You'll find scholarships, or you can do community college for a year while you save up. You're resourceful. You've always been so good at figuring things out. You stole from me, I said quietly, letting each word land like a stone in still water. We reallocated resources within the family, Mom corrected, cutting her pot roast with precise movements, the knife making neat, controlled slices. That money was meant to help both of you succeed. Kyle shrugged, his mouth still full of food, and said casually, It's not even that nice of a car. The Mustang's cool, but it's like the base model, not even the GT. Something inside me snapped. I felt it physically, like a wire pulled too tight finally breaking. Say that again. My voice came out cold and sharp, a tone I didn't recognize as my own. They all stared at me. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Dad's hand froze on his water glass. Kyle blinked, confused by my reaction. I'd never used that tone before in my entire life. I was the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over and made sure everyone got along. I was the one who apologized first even when I'd done nothing wrong. Ava, don't be dramatic, Mom warned, her voice taking on that particular edge she used when she wanted to shut down a conversation. There's no need to make a scene over this. We're family. Family helps each other. And sometimes that means sacrificing for the greater good. The greater good, I repeated slowly, tasting the words. Is that what you call stealing $23,000 from your daughter? The greater good. Dad finally spoke up, his voice tired. Ava, that's enough. Your mother made a decision she thought was best for everyone. Kyle needs to be able to get to work, and you're smart enough to find other options. Can we please just have a nice dinner? I picked up my phone, stopped the recording, and stood up. I'm done. You haven't finished your food, Mom said, as if that was the most important thing happening. I'm done with all of it, I clarified, and walked out of the dining room while they sat there in stunned silence. The next day, I discovered Mom had been texting relatives her own carefully crafted version of the story, controlling the narrative before I could say anything. Aunt Marianne, my dad's sister who lived 2 towns over, forwarded me a screenshot of a group chat I wasn't included in. Mom's message read, Just wanted to give everyone a heads up that Ava's going through a difficult phase right now. She had plenty of scholarship opportunities that she chose not to pursue, and we redirected some unused education funds to help Kyle get reliable transportation for his new job. She's being a bit ungrateful about it, but I'm sure she'll come around once she matures a bit. Please keep her in your thoughts. Unused funds. Like I hadn't spent 6 years carefully building that account, adding to it with every paycheck and every graduation gift. Like Grandpa hadn't specifically designated it for my education in legal documents. I read the message 3 times, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Other relatives had responded with supportive messages, falling for Mom's version without question. You're such a good mom, Patricia. Balancing both kids' needs can't be easy. Ava will understand eventually when she's older. Family comes first. She'll realize that. Teenagers can be so dramatic about everything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to send them all the bank statements, the forged signature, the recording from dinner. Instead, I typed out a single reply to Aunt Marianne. Thank you for showing me this. I appreciate you more than you know. The truth will come out soon, and when it does, everyone will see the full picture. Then I blocked the family group chat, took a screenshot of Mom's message from my evidence folder, and got back to work. The financial aid office was tucked in the back corner of the administration building, behind a door that always stuck and smelled faintly of old paper and toner ink. I pushed it open and approached the desk where a tired-looking woman with glasses perched on her nose was typing something into an ancient computer. I need to talk to someone about changing my dependency status on my FAFSA, I said, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. She looked up, her expression shifting from bored bureaucrat to slightly more interested. That's complicated. Are you estranged from your parents? Because we need documentation for that, and it's a high bar to clear. Not officially estranged, not yet. But they stole my college fund and I can't access need-based aid because they claim me as a dependent on their taxes, even though they're refusing to help pay for school. Her expression shifted again, this time to something like sympathy mixed with recognition. Sit down. This might take a while. I spent the next hour explaining everything while she took notes on a yellow legal pad. The fund my grandfather had established. The forged signature on the transfer authorization. The car they'd bought for Kyle with my money. The text messages where they'd admitted what they'd done. The recording from Sunday dinner. She asked questions, made notes, and finally leaned back in her chair with a long exhale. If you can document financial abuse or prove they're refusing to support your education despite claiming you as a dependent, we might be able to override their information on your FAFSA. But you'll need rock-solid evidence. The committee doesn't grant these overrides easily. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots, the bank records, everything I'd collected. She studied them carefully, zooming in on details, and then looked up at me with something like respect. This is thorough, she said, still scrolling through my evidence. Really thorough. Have you considered becoming a paralegal? Because this level of documentation would impress any law office. Despite everything, I almost smiled. I was thinking accounting, actually. Numbers make sense to me. I can see that, she replied. Okay, here's what you need to do. Start gathering affidavits from anyone who knows about the original fund and your grandfather's intentions. Teachers who knew your family situation, other family members who might be willing to testify, your grandfather's lawyer if possible. We need to build a case that shows clear financial abandonment and proves you're supporting yourself despite their tax claims. She handed me a form. Fill this out completely. Don't leave anything blank. Attach all your documentation, the bank statements, the forged signature, the recording transcripts, everything. The committee meets in 3 weeks. If they approve your override, you'll qualify for grants, work study, and subsidized loans. It won't cover everything, but it'll help. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope, small but real. Thank you. Really, thank you. She smiled, the first genuine warmth I'd seen from her. Listen, I see a lot of students in complicated family situations. Most of them give up. The fact that you're here, fighting for this with evidence and strategy instead of just crying about it. You're going to be fine. You're going to do more than fine. I left her office with the form clutched in my hand, already mentally composing emails to my old teachers and making lists of documents I still needed. They'd tried to stop me, but they'd only made me more determined. Kyle's social media post went viral 3 days later, spreading through our town like wildfire. He'd filmed himself on his phone, standing next to the Mustang in our driveway with the sun glinting off the hood, revving the engine over and over. The caption read, "Thanks Mom and Dad. Guess being the favorite has its perks. Hashtag blessed, hashtag new car, hashtag dream come true." Within hours, it had thousands of views and hundreds of comments. I watched it spread in real time, sitting in the library parking lot during my break from work. Comments poured in, and not all of them were supportive the way Kyle had obviously expected. Wait, didn't your sister just graduate valedictorian? Where's her college fund? Is this the car they bought with her education money? I heard something about this from the Johnsons. Imagine bragging about your parents stealing from your sibling. Gross. My cousin goes to school with his sister. She had to defer because they emptied her account. This is sick. The audacity to post this publicly. Zero self-awareness. Kyle must have started reading the comments because the video disappeared about an hour after he posted it. But people had already screen recorded it, already saved it, already shared it across platforms. It spread to TikTok with commentary, then Twitter where it got picked up by accounts that shared stories about entitled people. Our town's gossip network lit up like Christmas lights. Mom called me 6 times that evening. I let every single call go to voicemail, watching my phone light up and vibrate on my desk while I studied chemistry formulas. Finally, she texted, "You need to make a post clarifying things immediately." People are getting the wrong idea about our family and it's affecting your father's business. This is serious, Ava. I read the message twice, then typed back. I'll think about it. I had no intention of clarifying anything. The truth was doing just fine spreading on its own, and I wasn't about to help them cover it up with convenient lies. Late that night, I sat in my childhood bedroom with my headphones on and replayed the recording from Sunday dinner. Mom's voice came through clear and cold. We reallocated resources within the family. She's being ungrateful. You're smart enough to find other options. Kyle's dismissive shrug almost audible in his tone. It's not even that nice of a car. Dad's tired voice. Can we please just have a nice dinner? I saved the file to my laptop, backed it up to 3 different cloud accounts, uploaded it to a password-protected folder on a secure server, and labeled it clearly. Family Dinner August 14, 2024, Admission of Fund Misappropriation. This wasn't just about the money anymore, though the money mattered desperately since I was now facing student loans and years of debt I shouldn't have needed. This was about the years of being second best, the pattern of favoritism that had poisoned my childhood, the casual cruelty of stealing my future and expecting me to smile about it because family comes first. They'd underestimated me my whole life. They thought I'd roll over and accept this because that's what I'd always done before. When Kyle broke my favorite mug, I'd said it was okay. When Mom forgot my birthday, I'd pretended it didn't hurt. When Dad never showed up to my award ceremonies because he was too busy with Kyle's sports, I told myself it didn't matter. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The girl who color-coded her homework and never made waves had been pushed too far. Now I was something sharper, something harder, something they should have seen coming but didn't because they'd never really looked at me. 2 weeks after Kyle got the car, he rear-ended someone at a red light on Main Street. He called me at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. His voice high and panicked in a way I'd never heard before. Ava, I messed up bad. Can you come to Thompson Avenue? Please, I need help. Almost said no. I should have said no. But old habits die hard, and some part of me still responded to family crisis. I drove to the accident scene and found him standing beside the Mustang's crumpled bumper, talking to a police officer who looked deeply unimpressed. The other driver, a woman in her 40s wearing scrubs like she'd just gotten off a hospital shift, stood nearby with her arms crossed, looking furious and exhausted. Your insurance information, please, the officer said to Kyle, holding out his hand expectantly. Kyle's face went pale, then red, then pale again. It's under my mom's name. Think. She handles all that stuff. The officer raised an eyebrow. You think? You don't know your own insurance information. Can I call her? Kyle's hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone. It turned out the insurance had lapsed exactly 2 months ago. Mom hadn't paid the premium, probably because money was tight after they'd dropped $23,000 on the car and whatever financing they'd needed to complete the purchase. Now Kyle was looking at a ticket for driving without insurance, a lawsuit from the other driver whose bumper was definitely damaged, and a car he couldn't legally drive until the insurance situation was fixed. That night Mom called me. Not to apologize, not to acknowledge what they'd done. To ask for money. Ava, I know things have been tense between us, but we need your help, Mom said, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she wanted something. The insurance company wants $2,000 to reinstate the policy retroactively and cover the gap, and we're a little short this month with your father's business being slow. Could you possibly help us out? We'd pay you back, of course. I sat on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. The audacity was stunning, truly breathtaking. No, I said simply. What? She sounded genuinely confused, like she couldn't fathom why I'd refuse. I said no. Ava, be reasonable. Kyle can't drive without insurance, and if he can't drive he can't get to work. You're punishing him for something that wasn't his fault. The accident could have happened to anyone. I'm broke, Mom. Remember. I had to defer college enrollment because someone stole my entire tuition fund. I'm working 2 jobs just to save up enough to start community college next semester. I don't have $2,000 to spare. My voice was calm, factual, cold. Silence. Then her voice turned sharp, defensive. You're punishing your own family. That's cruel, Ava. That's vindictive and small. I raised you better than this. I smiled into the phone, a bitter expression she couldn't see. Maybe I learned from the best. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. For the first time in my life, I'd set a boundary and held it. The phone rang again immediately. I declined the call. It rang twice more. I blocked the number. That felt even better. Aunt Marian called me that weekend from her home in Tallahassee. Her voice gentle but serious in that way that meant she had difficult information to share. Ava, honey, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about it for days and I can't keep quiet anymore. What is it? I asked, already bracing myself. Your mom moved that money weeks before your grandfather's memorial service. I was helping organize the reception and I overheard her on the phone with the bank. She told them you'd given permission to reallocate the funds for immediate family needs, that you were all in agreement about helping Kyle. My hands tightened on the phone until my knuckles went white. I never gave permission. She never even discussed it with me. I know, sweetheart. I figured that out when I saw the way you reacted to Kyle's car. And then when I started asking careful questions around the family, the timeline didn't make sense. You were in the middle of final exams when that transfer happened. There's no way you were involved. Do you remember the exact date? I asked, already pulling up my calendar. She gave me the date. I checked my school records. I'd been taking my AP Calculus final that afternoon. I couldn't have been on the phone authorizing bank transfers. I sent Aunt Marianne photos of the forged authorization form, zooming in on the signature that wasn't quite mine. She went quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again her voice was shaking. Ava, this is fraud. You know that, right? This isn't just a family disagreement or poor judgment. This is a crime. Yeah, I whispered. I know. What are you going to do? I looked out my bedroom window at the Mustang sitting in our driveway, its front bumper still dented from Kyle's accident, a reminder of their carelessness. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth, I said to Aunt Marianne. Not just our family but officially. Legally. They need to face real consequences, not just awkward dinners and gossip. Aunt Marianne sighed, a sound of resignation and support mixed together. Your mother isn't going to take this well. She'll fight you hard, probably turn other family members against you. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it until now. After I hung up with her, I made a list of everyone I needed to contact. My grandfather's lawyer who'd handled his estate. My high school guidance counselor who'd written my college recommendation letters and knew about the fund. My AP English teacher who'd helped me apply for scholarships. The bank officer who'd managed the original account setup. Each one would be another piece of evidence. Another voice confirming what had been stolen from me. I spent the next week collecting affidavits, meeting people at coffee shops and offices, explaining what had happened and asking them to document what they knew. Mrs. Patterson, my guidance counselor, cried when I told her, Ava, I wrote in your recommendation about how hard you'd worked to fund your own education. This is heartbreaking. Will you write a statement for me? Yes. She nodded immediately. I'll have it to you by tomorrow. My grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, was even more helpful. He pulled up the original trust documents and gave me certified copies. Your grandfather was very specific about this fund. He wanted to make sure no one could touch it except you. He'd be devastated to know what happened. Can you testify about his intentions? Absolutely. And Ava, you should also consider filing a police report. What they did is felony fraud in Florida. I picked up 2 campus jobs the week I finally enrolled in community college for spring semester, determined to claw my way back to my original plan no matter how long it took. One job was tutoring freshman English in the library's writing center. The other was cleaning research labs after hours, mopping floors and wiping down benches while the building echoed with emptiness. My first cleaning shift ended at midnight. I walked to my car under flickering parking lot lights, My back aching and my hands raw from industrial cleaner. The smell of disinfectant clung to my clothes and hair. This wasn't how I'd imagined my first semester of college. I should have been in a dorm room right now, maybe staying up late talking with a roommate, or studying in a common area with new friends, figuring out who I wanted to be away from my family. Instead, I was scrubbing lab sinks at 11:30 at night and working through general education requirements at a community college while living in my childhood bedroom, sleeping under the same ceiling as the people who'd stolen from me. But I wasn't broken. Every time I mopped a floor or graded another freshman's essay about their summer vacation, I reminded myself that this was temporary. My parents thought they'd set me back permanently. They thought I'd crumble under the weight of their betrayal, maybe give up on college entirely and settle for some local job. They were wrong. I was building something they couldn't touch, something that belonged only to me. Each paycheck went into an account at a different bank, one they didn't know about and couldn't access. Each credit hour I completed brought me closer to transferring to a 4-year university. Each day I woke up and chose forward motion was a day I won. Kyle showed up at the community college parking lot one afternoon in late October, the Mustang's engine rumbling loud enough to turn heads across the parking lot. He rolled down the window and grinned at me, that same careless smile he'd had his whole life. "Still mad, sis," he called out. I kept walking toward my car, keys already in my hand. He revved the engine, the sound obnoxious in the quiet afternoon. "Come on, it's not that big a deal. You're in college now anyway, right? Community college counts." I pulled out my phone and started recording, holding it up so he could see. He was still talking, still grinning like this was all a joke, like he couldn't understand why I wouldn't just get over it. "You always were dramatic about everything. Mom says you're being manipulative, trying to make them feel guilty. It's kind of pathetic, honestly." "Leave," I said quietly, still filming. "Or I'm calling campus security." His grin faltered for the first time. "You're seriously going to call security on your own brother?" "Yes." I kept my finger over the campus security number on my phone. "You've got 10 seconds. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before, like I'd become someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I had. The old Ava would have laughed it off, would have tried to smooth things over. This Ava had learned to protect herself. "You've changed," he said, and it didn't sound like a compliment. "You're right," I replied. "I have." He peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing, leaving rubber marks on the pavement. The next day, I filed a harassment report with the Student Safety Office, attaching the video. They reviewed it and sent him a formal warning letter. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. Tax season brought a new problem I hadn't anticipated. I filed my return early in January, claiming myself as independent based on my work income and my living situation. I was prepared for questions, had all my documentation ready. 2 weeks later, I got a rejection notice from the IRS. Someone else had already claimed me as a dependent on their tax return. I called the number on the notice and spent 45 minutes on hold, listening to the same instrumental loop of classical music until I wanted to scream. Finally, an agent picked up. "Iris, this is Patricia speaking. How can I help you?" I explained the situation. She pulled up my account and sighed. "It looks like your parents filed first and listed you as a dependent. That's why your return was rejected. But I don't live with them anymore, and they're not supporting my education or living expenses. I'm paying for everything myself. Then you'll need to file a dispute with documentation proving your independence. Do you have proof of separate residence, proof you're paying your own expenses, proof they're not providing financial support?" "Yes, I have all of that." "Good. I'll email you the dispute form. Gather your evidence and mail it to the address listed. Include bank statements showing you pay your own expenses, your lease agreement if you have one, any documentation of them refusing to help with college costs. The IRS takes these disputes seriously." I spent the next week gathering everything. Bank statements showing I paid for my own food, gas, textbooks, and tuition. My lease agreement for the apartment I'd moved into a month ago, finally escaping my parents' house. Screenshots of text messages where mom had refused to help with college costs. Pay stubs from both my jobs. I mailed everything to the IRS in a thick envelope with delivery confirmation, then waited. The automated system said it could take 6 to 8 weeks for a response. I tried to forget about it and focus on my classes, but the unfairness of it gnawed at me. They'd stolen my college fund, blocked me from financial aid by claiming me as a dependent, and were now getting tax breaks for a child they refused to support. 6 weeks later, the IRS responded. They were opening a formal review of my parents' tax return. An investigator would be contacting all parties. I'd need to provide additional documentation and possibly testify about my living situation. Mom left me a voicemail that night. I'd never heard her voice like this before, shaking with what sounded like genuine fear mixed with rage. You reported us to the IRS. Are you insane? Do you know what kind of trouble this causes? They're threatening to audit our last 3 years of returns. Your father's business could be affected. This is beyond petty, Ava. This is vindictive. I listened to it 3 times, saved it to my evidence folder, and felt nothing. Her voice at the end, cold and final. You're going to regret this. I promise you that. I whispered to my empty apartment, my voice steady and calm. So will you? The next day I received a letter from the IRS requesting copies of the forged fund transfer authorization. They were investigating whether my parents had fraudulently claimed me as a dependent while simultaneously misappropriating education funds. Each piece was connecting. The pattern was becoming visible. And there was no going back now. A week later, an envelope arrived at my apartment. The return address was Dad's motel. Inside was a piece of paper I recognized immediately, yellowed with age and folded carefully. It was a handwritten note from Grandpa, dated 2 weeks before he died. My dear Ava, it read in his shaky script. This fund is my promise to you. No matter what happens, no matter who says what, this money is for your education and your future. Don't let anyone spend your dreams for you. I believe in the person you're going to become. Love always, Grandpa. I read it 3 times, then pressed it against my chest and sobbed. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known this might happen, and he'd left me this message. Proof that someone had believed in me unconditionally. That night, I framed the note and hung it above my desk. Every time I studied, every time I doubted myself, I looked up at those words. Don't let anyone spend your dreams for you. My academic advisor called me into her office during my 2nd semester at community college. Ava, I wanted to talk to you about your transfer applications. Your GPA is exceptional, and I've been following your story. Blinked. My story. She turned her computer screen toward me. There was a LinkedIn article with my photo, titled, Student Overcomes Family Financial Fraud to Pursue Education. Apparently, someone from the legal aid office had shared my case as an example of resilience, and it had been picked up by local news, then education blogs. You're getting attention from several universities. One of them, a financial analyst internship program, specifically requested your application. They said your perseverance and attention to detail are exactly what they're looking for. My hands trembled as I read the email she forwarded. 6 months ago, I'd been crying behind a concrete pillar, my future stolen. Now, my pain was turning into opportunity. Should I apply? Yes. She smiled. Absolutely. The court hearing happened on a cold morning in February. Mom and Kyle sat with their lawyer in a downtown courthouse, facing questions about the fund misappropriation. I didn't attend. I had an organic chemistry midterm that morning, and I wasn't going to let their drama disrupt my education anymore. Aunt Ruth went in my place and texted me updates. Your mom's lawyer tried to argue it was a family decision. The judge wasn't buying it. They're asking about the forged signature. Kyle looks sick. The prosecutor called your documentation meticulous and damning. I put my phone away and focused on my exam. Chemical equations and molecular structures made sense in a way my family never had. When I walked out of the lecture hall 2 hours later, I had 3 voicemails and a dozen texts. The judge had ordered restitution. Mom and Dad had to repay the full amount of the college fund, plus interest and legal fees. Kyle's car was being seized as part of the settlement. The money would be placed in a protected trust in my name, untouchable by anyone else. Justice had happened without me even being in the room. 6 months later, I launched the Collins Future Fund. It was a small grant program, just $500 per student, for kids whose college money had disappeared due to family circumstances. I funded it with part of the restitution money, along with donations that came in after my story went viral on social media. The first scholarship bore Grandpa's full name, the Robert James Collins Educational Recovery Grant. Applications poured in. Single mothers whose ex-husbands drained joint accounts. Kids whose parents spent tuition money on addiction. Students whose families had simply decided they didn't deserve higher education. I read every application personally, my heart breaking over and over. By the end of the first year, we'd given out 12 grants. Local businesses started donating. A community foundation reached out about partnership. What started as my private revenge against family betrayal was becoming something bigger than me. Something that mattered. I thought about what Grandpa had said. Don't let anyone spend your dreams. Now I was helping other people protect theirs. The certified letter arrived on a Saturday morning, forwarded from my old address. The return address was my parents' house. I held it for a long moment before opening it. Inside was a handwritten note from both of them. Ava, we've had time to reflect on everything that happened. We realize now that we made serious mistakes. We'd like to meet and discuss reconciliation. We're still your family. Love, Mom and Dad. I read it twice, then walked to my desk and pulled out a folder labeled Closed Accounts. I slid the letter inside, right behind the court settlement papers and Kyle's repo notice. Then I closed the folder and put it back in the drawer. I stood at my apartment balcony, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, students I'd never meet were getting ready for college with money that couldn't be stolen from them. Somewhere out there, my grandpa's legacy was protecting dreams he'd never see fulfilled. Mom and Dad had bought Kyle a car with my future. I'd built a new life with their silence. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need reconciliation. I needed exactly what I had. Freedom, education, and the knowledge that I'd turned their betrayal into something worth more than they could ever understand. I closed my eyes and smiled. Thanks, Grandpa, I whispered to the night air. I became exactly who you believed I could be.